As I start collecting wood for the Ulysses, it dawned on me that many of you don't realize the preparation it takes to get lumber from the forest directly into your model room. What we do is we'll buy these strips of prepared, sized, flat, straight lumber, and we're just in awe. But the truth is, bulk wood doesn't come like that. So I'm going to take you through this little journey with my friends, Hatto Pidak, who is a vet, but his passion is planting sustainable forests. And so he collects and sells tropical hardwoods, but more important, he is continuously planting more trees than he takes out of the forest, thereby ensuring that you and I have an unending supply of nice, high-quality hardwoods. So let's take a look at my shed in the back. Here is the stock that I collected from Hatto yesterday. There are 6 pieces of wood, and they all look lovely, but you'll see a few things on them. One is the cut date. So these were cut in November last year. So they haven't aged a lot, even though Hatto seems to feel that they're fairly dry. I like to leave my wood aging in the environment where I'm going to build it for at least 6 months. But more importantly, even though they look nice and flat, you'll see in a minute that this look can be very deceiving. The first thing you'll realize is that they're no longer the same size. And the reason for that is these boards had a natural bend. So what I did is I took the longest ruler I had, run it along the board, and when I found the center of the bend, so in this case, for this board, I can run it along, just look, and as soon as I see it rising, I know that this board is flat in this direction up until here. And as it goes past, it starts curving up. So if I didn't care too much about the length of these pieces, I would actually put a line here and cut it on the chop saw. The second area that you may not notice is if you put a ruler here, you'll see that the board has a natural cup to it. So again, if we put this through a thickness planer, we're going to lose a lot of this board. So in this case, again, I can do the same exercise, put it on, and you see it's got a fairly big cup here, and yet on this side, it's relatively flat. In fact, it's flat until it reaches here. So I would put a cut line on this board right here and cut this on the table saw. This one would have a fair amount of planing to do, whereas this one will have very little because it has very little cup. The other thing you'll notice is that these boards are very rough. They're not nice and clean like when you get it out of the store. And that's because, and they're also much thicker. So these are supposed to be 1 inch, they're actually about 1 1/8. So you're getting some free wood when you get bulk wood, simply because the seller of the wood knows that you're going to be taking that off, and you have no right to be paying for wood that you'll never use. When you get wood from the forest, and you'll see it in this one, the first thing you do as soon as you get your wood is you paint and seal the ends of the grain. If you don't do this, this is some coffee wood that I got, and you'll see that it started to crack, and that crack has gone all the way down. So again, now making it difficult for me, I'm going to have to cut this wood here, and I'm probably going to end up losing, at least half of this coffee wood. The last little issue is that I work with a Proxon thickness planer. So for me, I have to cut all my pieces down to 3 inches to be able to pass it through the thickness planer. The final finish can be put on the Jim Burns thickness sander, which will take up to 6 inches in my case. But I could also take this to my friend who you're going to meet, Richard Hubbard, who has a fairly large thickness planer, or jointer as it's called, and he'll take this down for me, leaving it wide and leaving it long so that I have some long pieces. This is what the finished stock looks like when it comes. It's absolutely straight. It's straight as an arrow, and more importantly to me, there's no cup on it. This is absolutely level. So again, and this particular wood this has been aging since 2016. So this is 10 years old. This is as stable as it's going to get, and I'm going to get absolutely no movement in this at all. So again, when you're on the model, you don't want to put wood that isn't fully dried and acclimatized to your home where you're building the model. So I have no qualms or no risk that when I cut these pieces off, I'm going to get them moving. Having said that, it's always possible that when you start making very thin cuts and you cut a piece like this, let me even check this. So this has a very slight bow in it here, and a very slight bow in it on this side. So you might put this through the jointer, and I have a lovely jointer from Proxon that will make this nice and clean. And again, all this is doing is making sure that you have less natural stresses when you're putting the wood on your model, and the odds of being absolutely accurate in terms of your joinery. Now, the best way to get round of all these problems of cupping and bending is in fact to get what is called quarter-sawn timber. And that is where the grain in the tree is lined up so it's absolutely straight, because the cupping is actually caused by the grain in an angle like this, and so there's just a natural inclination of the wood to bend. When you have quarter-sawn timber, the grain is absolutely straight, and the odds of it bending is close to zero. Not impossible, but close to zero. So that, unfortunately, costs a little more money, and you'll have to have a relationship with the lumber yard that's actually cutting it to make sure that they actually cut it. It could be as much as 1/3 to 2/3 more expensive. I think the main issue is really getting the sawmill to agree to do it in the first place. In a perfect world, I would only use quarter-sawn timber. The last and perhaps most important for me anyway is that my models are subject to tropical pests. You might see a little line on the wall there going up, and there's another one over there, and there's one here. Those are subterranean termites. These are termites that come up from the ground, and in the tropical climates you have to chemically insulate your house from the ground. Otherwise, these guys will eat everything that is cellulose based. So your model could be one of them. That's not so much of a trouble. The problem we have are drywood termites, which every rainy season they fly. And it's probably the biggest problem facing modelers in the tropical climates. I've actually had to fumigate a number of my models where you start to see the frass or droppings from the termites, where they're in the wood and eating away normally at the softest wood they can. And as soon as you see that, you need to gas your models. And this is normally done with 2 gases. One is called methyl bromide, which is more and more difficult to get. And the second one, which is the gas that's used, is called Vicane. The wood is put under gas for 24 hours, and there's no treatment attached to it. What it does is it kills everything that's alive in the wood. The very next day, a new guy can fly in and start chopping away. So there are 2 solutions to that. One is the one we use, which are tropical hardwoods. They're like the rest of us. They'll eat the softest, nicest tasting wood and leave the bitter hard stuff for last, just before they starve. But make no mistake, they'll eat green heart, purple heart, and something like this, which doesn't even float. This is kabukali. Just before they starve, they'll eat this. And then finally what I do, and I do it to all my models, is I chemically treat the wood by painting on the finished piece before I stick the next piece. Now, for those of you who want to stay free of chemicals, you may not accept that, but if I've spent 2 years working on a model, I'll put the gloves on and it's simply painted on with a paintbrush. And the last little beasties we need to worry about are called powder post beetles. And you'll see the frass here. This is in a cupboard of mine, and look at more of it here. It's fine, it's like talcum powder. And if you look closely enough, I'll try and zoom this in, you'll see those tiny little holes on the wood. And that's where, again, they're living inside this cupboard and pushing this out. These are much more difficult to deal with. There are treatments where you can inject into these holes, but again, fumigation is probably the best solution. The last topic I want to deal with is the type of wood that you're going to use for modeling. And I have to tell you, this was the most frustrating issue in my early modeling career, because all of the books refer to hardwoods or semi-hardwoods that are found in the temperate and North American, European climates. Of course, I live in the tropics and those things are not available. So I have to buy from Timberyard or some other shipper and ship it all the way to Trinidad. And that wood could end up costing me at least double whatever any of you would pay for it. And I totally ignored that I was actually living in a ship modeler's wood paradise. I am surrounded by tropical hardwoods, and I have more available to me than most of you will have, and at a fraction of the price that you would pay for it. And so if you go to Ship Modeler's Notes, Chapter 5, there's some excellent articles written by various people describing all the various woods that you should be using. So having read it and you've learned everything there is to learn, take that book and put it back in the library. And then go out and collect samples of woods that are available to you locally in your local area. And what you're looking for are basically two things. You're looking for hardwoods and you're looking for close grain woods. So when you look at the piece of wood, you should not see a grain. So all these are samples of different woods that were available to me locally. And I went out and found a solution to everything. Also, what you're looking for is contrasting woods, woods that have different colors. So here are a series of woods that are available to me that grow in the tropics: Wamara, Kabukali, sea grape, green heart, purple heart, juniper, coffee wood, and mahogany. And so all of these woods are available, but not necessarily in the form that I want. The other interesting thing that I found is that color variations in the same wood can vary hugely. This is the hardest wood known to me. It's called Wamara, and it's available next door in the country of Guyana. And it's a beautiful dark wood with a very tight grain, a magnificent wood. Doesn't even float, it's so heavy. But the interesting thing about Wamara, it comes in different colors. And so you can get pieces where the wood is absolutely creamy white and it'll go dark brown to almost purple. The other interesting thing is we have available to us purple heart. Where are we? There we are. And purple heart, when you first cut it and clean it, is purple. It's a magnificent wood. The problem with purple heart, when you put it on your boat, is in 2 or 3 years' time, it's going to look like this. This is green heart, and you will not be able to distinguish between the purple heart and the green heart because they both fade to a dark brown. These are the two woods. When you're polishing them up, you'll see they're quite different. But that's what they look like over time. In the case of Trinidad and Tobago, I found an abundance of juniper. And this is juniper. And this whole model here is juniper. And it's a marvelous wood. I have any amount at a quarter of the cost that if I brought in any of your typical North American or European modeling woods, it just would be so expensive. And what you want to keep yourself away from is woods like this. This is southern yellow pine. And you just look at it and you can see the grain. And you want to keep far away from any type of wood that has this level of grain in it. I've seen some models being built around the world using woods that have grain like this, and it is so distracting. Compare that to a piece of juniper, which here's a piece of juniper, and it virtually has no grain. Boxwoods, pearwoods, they're all like this. They're slow-growing woods that tend to make them hard, and the grain is almost imperceptible. So when you look at the model here, both in terms of the green heart, which has gone all dark, and the juniper, the one thing you do not see is the grain, and that's what makes an excellent wood. So do a little research in your neighborhood, find out what's available, make up some blanks like this, and you'll find you have to label them because they change color over time, and then make a decision of what is easiest to get to you, and you'll have no worries in this area. And just to make a final point, this is a piece of green heart. I got this from my friend Richard Hadid, who is doing a deck, and he knows I'm always on the lookout for fantastic different woods. And this particular batch of green heart was much darker than normally is. And we're always trying to use ebony. And this is a piece of ebony here. And you can see there's very little difference between the green heart and the ebony. And if you look at the model, you'll see that it's darkened and held its color very well, and it's nice and contrasty. And the three woods used on this boat are the dark green heart. For the deck boards, I'm using coffee wood. And as I told you before, this is a piece of juniper. And you can see the contrast quite nice. The deck board being very light, the juniper is the main modeling wood, and the green heart to construct the whale. So that's a quick 1, 2, 3 on wood preparation in terms of in the shop. And in a later video, I'm going to take you and meet you to 3 of my friends, Hato Pidak, who is the forester and vet, Richard Hadid, who is a woodworker, and Richard Hubbard, who really makes some of the most exquisite furniture and who has a shop that I use from time to time in preparing my tropical hardwoods. So I'll see you in my next video, and remember, keep modeling.